Hey everybody, I'm Lydia.
Hello, this is Avery.
Hey, this is Catherine.
And welcome to PLIX DataBasic Online. So before we start, I just wanted to give a shout out to some of our upcoming workshops. In July, we'll be hosting 3 sessions for our CubeSats activity. We'll be having some PLIX community calls starting in July, and we will be doing another round of PLIX urban ecology sometime later this summer. And please, if you haven't already, you can RSVP using that link there. Our agenda for today, doing a quick little welcome right now. I'm going to give a brief overview of DataBasic. We'll talk about the 2 activities you read about, analog spreadsheet and data sculptures. We'll do a breakout for on these activities, and then we will do some share outs and answer any questions at the end. And I'll just say it's great to have some new people in the room today, as well as seeing some people who have been joining our past workshops. So thanks for being here. So what is DataBasic? DataBasic is a set of tools and hands-on workshops and activities that get people used to thinking and talking about data. So many decisions are made using our data. We make decisions based on data all the time, even if we're not thinking that way. And these activities are here to get us in a data mindset in friendly and playful ways. DataBasic started with, well, there was a PLIX residency exchange between Rahul Bhargava, who is one of the researchers behind the DataBasic activities, and Xenia Hernandez and Amanda Feist from the St. Paul Public Library. And as part of that residency exchange, Xenia and Amanda came to the Media Lab and learned more about Rahul's work and more about the research behind DataBasic. And then Rahul had the chance to go see how Amanda and Xenia were running these workshops that they had co-designed together. So DataBasic, as I said earlier, is a set of tools. We have word counter, WTF, CSV, same diff, and connect the dots. And they're all activities you can do on the computer at databasic.io to learn and explore data. And then there's also the Data Culture Project, which is not on the computer. And it's all about creating a culture of data and to get people who may have felt left out of the data conversations to become part of the conversation and to feel empowered in talking about data. So we'll be talking about 2 of the activities today, analog spreadsheet and data sculptures, which are, again, not on the computer and very community-based and playful. So Avery will take it away with analog spreadsheet.
Great. Hello, everyone. The first activity we're going to discuss today is the analog spreadsheet. And this is a really fun and relatively easy way for creating a shared data set with a group of patrons. So there's an example in the background of this slide, and you can see it's just a couple of pieces of paper. You can also use a dry erase board. But ahead of time, you as the facilitator basically set up this spreadsheet with a bunch of categories. So here we see first name, shirt color, birthday, things like that. As patrons come to the workshop or into the room, they populate the spreadsheet. And what it allows you to do, again, in an analog manner, is devise a data set, which is a jumping off point for a lot of talking points and challenges faced when analyzing data, when looking through data, and understanding how data represents people. And yeah, we love this activity for so many reasons. Here are a couple of those reasons. First, it shows that a group of people can come together, even if they don't know each other, and can easily create a data set together. It also shows that people have to make decisions about the ways that we interpret data, the ways that we clean up data, the ways that we represent data. And it shows that challenge in that, if you have to come up with a simple statistic, there's actually a lot of background that goes into that, and it's a lot messier process than we usually anticipate. And finally, it's a really good jumping off point for discussing things that can be tricky to discuss, like data privacy, consent to give your data, and also the ethics of not only providing data, but also the ways that data are represented. So there are a couple of good ways to solicit a variety of data types. And this basically stems from the fact that you can ask a number of different questions within different categories for retrieving data. So you have things like an identification, a name, and that we'll discuss that in regard to data privacy. You can get geographic data using, for example, your library, which is what we use this week. But you could also use things like hometown or your favorite place to vacation. In regard to categorical data, or a set of data where there are specific A, B, C, D points you can choose from, you can choose something like favorite season. But you can also choose something that is numerical in value. So we expect a number between 0 and infinity for something like the number of pets you have. For a binary data set, so what is thought to be a yes or no simple answer, but often isn't, you could use something like, do you like ice cream? A yes or no question. Or, do you like to read books? So something like that. And then there are other questions that you can leave a little bit more open-ended, such as describe any experience with data that you have. And so all of these different domains of questions will allow you to explore, as the facilitator, different talking points in regard to all of the data types that you're collecting. And so within these types of data, you can encourage patrons to start to look for patterns and to start to tell stories as you sort of collectively go through this data together. So you can ask simple probing questions, starting off pretty basic and just, what do you notice? Can you draw any correlations or causations among the data that you're looking at? Do particular people from a place like a particular season? Do people from one library like a particular kind of ice cream, or have more experience with data? So these are the sorts of trends that you can start to extrapolate as you look at the data. You can also try to sort of explore what story we could tell, only looking at the data set. Of course, data is not going to be wholly representative of a group of people. And you can see how the story that you're telling with that data at hand compares to the actual story that you're working with as you discuss with your patrons. In regard to exploring who has the power to control data, you can sort of assess who has the power to determine what is captured in the data. So you as the facilitator are really at the mercy of this process because you're determining the questions ahead of time, and the people filling out the questions don't really have a say in regard to what data is being captured. You can also explore who decides how questions are asked and how their answers are interpreted. So that sort of gets at that power dynamic again of you as a facilitator deciding questions, and collectively, when you are telling stories, when you're looking for patterns, deciding how data are interpreted. And finally, you can ask, what's missing? As you start to analyze the data, you'll notice that there's a lot of sort of plot holes. And there are a couple of questions that you can ask to get across something like what's missing. So in the previous instances, we've done like, what is your shirt color? It's pretty straightforward because like I'm wearing gray right now, but if you're wearing polka dots or a striped shirt, you have to sort of choose if it's one, like which color stripe it is. And immediately there you're losing the holistic picture of the data. So you get into that question of representation. Is the data accurate of the group of people? And you can also call out one particular person in the data set and say, well, is this person representative of all of the people here? Because in many cases with data, the extrapolation comes from just a limited set of factors. And this is not often the case when looking at the whole story. So to look at some of the examples that you're all able to provide in terms of identifiers and name, we get into the idea of discussing data privacy. Some people feel comfortable giving their full names, like Catherine. Thank you, Catherine. And then some other people just will give a first initial of their last name or no last name at all. And this is great to see such a variety in terms of how much people are willing to share, because it gets at the question of how comfortable are you giving this data away? And do you know to whom you're giving these data? As you start to discuss how to categorize or analyze data, you can also get into discussion of data organizing, data cleaning. Often to get a really nice chart or a map or a graph, there is some level of data cleaning that is needed. And this becomes really complicated. So when you look at favorite season, for example, we think in the US, just looking at our case purely, there are 4 seasons. But fall is sometimes also called autumn. And so if you don't plan for that in advance, then the data are already going to be skewed. And of course, Karen from Denmark listed strawberry as her favorite season. So there's also the open-ended ways that questions can be interpreted. And if we think about how we would sort out this data set, then strawberry might be left out of the story, or autumn might be left out of the story because we as the person managing the data only look at winter, spring, summer, fall.
Great. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the second activity today, which is data sculptures. This is a great hands-on activity where we ask participants to create a sculpture that is a representative of something interesting that they notice in a data set. So the materials required for this are a data set that you can give your patrons to work with, and then just a variety of craft materials that they can use to make their sculptures. And then this is a great way to help people get started making their own representations of data and feel comfortable working with data in a way that doesn't actually involve any of the traditional tools that people may associate with data, like computers or spreadsheets. And we like this because, it helps people feel more comfortable to start engaging with data storytelling and data processing and data analysis. So just a few more things that we think are really great about this activity is that it works really well for learners of all ages to get started working with and understanding data. It really helps people think beyond charts and graphs as the only way of representing data or information. It really helps them sort of broaden their mind and understand that you can represent data in a variety of ways, in a variety of formats. And it really helps to allow people to bring their own interests and creativity into this activity. It's also a great way to leverage local news or data sets that you might have at your library as the data that you ask people to build their sculptures off of. And this can also sort of be an added benefit to this activity, just encouraging people to engage sort of civically with some interesting data that you might have access to. And the other thing we love about this activity and that we frequently do when running a workshop is that it pairs great with the analog spreadsheet. You can actually have participants in a workshop fill out the analog spreadsheet as an introductory activity, and then later ask them to make a data sculpture representing something interesting they found in that co-created data set that you made as a group. So when you're thinking about setting this activity up, one facilitation tip that we have is to be thoughtful about the materials that you include for people to make their sculptures. And in particularly, we recommend avoiding Legos and writing tools, because as we have run this activity, we have seen that when you include materials such as those, people are very much more inclined to just make their data sculpture some sort of variant of a bar graph. So they'll take a pencil and they'll just draw like a little bar chart, or they'll basically use Legos to recreate and stack like little columns. And because one of the main goals of this activity is to get people thinking beyond that, we like to sort of intentionally, as a facilitator, not include the materials that are going to let them take that sort of maybe easiest or first idea to build their sculpture. So instead, we recommend trying materials like Play-Doh, pipe cleaners, popsicle sticks, googly eyes, pom-poms, colorful paper, you know, really any other leftover supplies you might have from any other workshops you've run. Sometimes we've used paper cups. We've seen participants in the past use like a chip bag or a pretzel bag that they had as a snack before starting the workshop. So it's really a great activity to sort of use whatever you have on hand. And we just sort of discourage including materials that can easily be turned into bar graphs. Great. So the other thing I'd like to call out about this activity as a facilitator is that it's a really great one for encouraging peer collaboration. Typically, when we run this activity, we ask people to pair up and make a data sculpture together. And this allows people to have some of those conversations with each other about how they might interpret data. Sometimes they'll come across things that maybe they notice differently, and since they have to make one sculpture, they actually have to work out some of those different interpretations or different understandings of the data. And those are like the sort of process focused things that we think are really great about this activity. So we do encourage, as a facilitator, you to think about groups of 2 or 3 maybe collaborating on one sculpture. And here you can see actually a photo from a workshop that we ran in Akron, Ohio, with some librarians who are doing this activity with us. And then finally, our last facilitation tip for this activity is to wrap up your workshop with a gallery walk. This is a really great way to showcase all the creations that your group has made and give everyone the chance to talk a little bit about what they made, what it's representing, and also the process that they went to sort of make the decisions. And I think this is an opportunity as a facilitator to allow people to talk about their work and get a little recognition, but also is a chance for you to highlight the different ways that people maybe interpret the same data. And as a group, you can sort of see the diversity of ways that people might come up with interesting stories to tell from the same data set. Awesome. So with that wraps up our little intro presentation here, and we're going to hop into the breakout rooms shortly. When you get into the breakout rooms, you'll find a set of questions that we have prepared for you as suggested discussion questions. And we will be around to help answer questions. We'll spend around 25 minutes or so in the breakout rooms and then come back here to wrap up as a group, answer any questions and discuss interesting things that we chatted about in our groups. So we're going to be opening up the breakout room shortly, right below this video window.